Welcome everyone to the third round of the Chennai Grandmasters 2026 sponsored by Quantbox. We have Arjun Erigaisi, the India number one and one of the favorites of the tournament entering in. His opponent for today is none other than Hans Niemann, and I can see that Arjun just took out a protein bar. So Arjun is bringing with him a protein bar, and every player brings something or the other with him. You can see that Hans coming in with a bottle of water, Ali Reza coming in with a lot of coolness. He is on 2 out of 2. Hans Niemann is in fact on 1 out of 2. He managed to draw both his games. First round against Abdusattorov, second against Nihal Sarin. Meanwhile, Arjun Erigaisi also drew both of his games against Andrekin and Abdusattorov. And now this big clash between Arjun and Hans, a handshake, and the game has begun. What's Arjun's first move going to be? This, dear friends, is the Neuro game of the day.
In chess and in life, lack of attention and focus costs you games and key moments. Instead of going for that third cup of coffee or that energy drink that overstimulates you or gives you jitters, try NeuroGum. It's viral in the US. It has a clinically proven blend of natural caffeine that gives alertness and L-theanine that gives you calm and stable focus without the jitters or the crash. Try NeuroGum. Link is in the description.
Arjun with the white pieces starts off with knight to f3. And Hans Niemann now, to decide what his first move is going to be, goes pawn to d5. And pawn to c4 played here. And e6. The queen's gambit declined structure. Pawn push to d4 is also possible. We have g3 now by Arjun. And believe me when I say they are going to fight. Hans and Arjun, big fighters. Bishop g2, getting the bishop on this long diagonal. And bishop e7. So if you look at this position and try to understand what both of these players are trying to do, Arjun was trying to avoid pawn to d4 and the Catalan setup, but has just gone for it. And now we are playing this very well-known line in the Catalan. Now the main move is castles, but Arjun goes for knight to c3. And this already takes the game into very interesting territory. I want to see how long Hans Niemann thinks for this move. He actually thinks for 3 minutes and plays knight bd7. Another way to play here was d takes c4. It's possible to play this way, but knight bd7. And Arjun goes knight e5. The best move now is c6. Just solidify the center. And it's an interesting moment. Hans does play c6. Because now you want to take and bring your knight to d7 to attack the e5 pawn. One of the problem pieces for black is the bishop on c8. White castles here. And now knight takes e5. D takes e5 is the best move. So he takes, attacking the knight on f6, and now knight to d7. So Hans, even though he's not in his prep, is kind of finding the best moves. Maybe he's in his prep. Arjun clearly in his preparation. He's at 1 hour 33 minutes. He takes on d5. And even though the engine is giving this as equal, it'll be interesting to see what Arjun has prepped up. Okay, makes sense to take with the e-pawn so that the bishop opens up. I think a good plan is rook e8, knight f8, knight e6. These can be the plans in the position. Also knight b6, pushing the pawns in the center. So f4 played. And now the best way for black to play is maybe to go for a check and then start pushing your queenside pawns with b5, a5. There's also the possibility to bring the knight to b6. But f5 played here, blocking the pawns on e5 and f4. And this does give Arjun a protected passer on e5. We have bishop e3. Arjun playing his moves quickly. And he's looking at these squares. I think f5 does give Arjun an edge. Knight b6. Hans is coming in. He wants to come to c4, attack the bishop and the pawn on b2. And Arjun Erigaisi now goes queen to c2. He defends the pawn on b2. So if you go knight c4, he'll just drop the bishop back to f2. Okay, Hans goes bishop e6. So the pieces have come out. And rook fd1. Just keeping an eye on the d5 pawn. And I'm curious to see what Hans does next. He gets up from the board. g5 is definitely an idea in the position. Hans settles in now. He goes knight c4. Now, not the best move perhaps, but is clearly in with a plan. He wants to bring his queen to a5 and then start pushing his b pawn. So bishop drops back. I was wondering if Arjun at any point has the possibility to play e4 because the rook stands opposite the queen. And that's the reason why the queen comes out. Okay, one move that does come to mind is pawn to b3 to just kick the knight away. Yes, he plays it. Pawn to b3. The knight cannot go back here. Going back seems very dubious. So knight a3 makes a lot of sense, hitting the queen. So you must go queen b2. So queen comes to b2. And now rook a c8. And we have rook to c1 and rook f d8. Rook d4. He brings his rook up the board. I mean, the other way to play here was maybe just play e3, maybe bishop e1. But rook d4 allows pawn to b5. And the idea of this move is to push the pawn to b4, c5, and things can get very nasty. Arjun goes rook d1, but already black's position is for choice. b4, pushing the pawn, the knight is attacked on c3. The knight has to move away. And knight to a4 played. And we have knight b5. A very good move here was, by the way, queen a6. Why? Because if you play c5 here, white has bishop d5 and the bishop is hanging. So with queen a6, you actually create the threat of c5. But knight b5, he goes back, rook d3. And now d4 played here by Hans. And Hans's point is to bring the knight into c3, play c5. But isn't this a free pawn? So he takes it. Arjun takes. Now c5 is what he plays. An important moment in the game. If you play bishop c5, rook d3, and you lose a piece here. So he goes back bishop e3. And Hans is ready with his next move as well. I think he's just basically prepared everything. He's saying that even though I'm a pawn down, you have these doubled pawns, while I have a majority on the queen side, so I'm pushing them. So if you take, he goes bishop d5. What a move by Arjun. Takes, rook takes. I mean, bishop d5 is an incredible move. If you took the rook, I would have taken on e6 and c8. So take on d5, rook d5, he takes, and now knight a3 played. Okay, if you play c3, I simply go queen c2, and white is better. But knight a3, and now he gives up the queen on a5, but Hans takes on d1. Insanely complicated position. King f2, and what is the point that Hans has c3. And he's like, if your queen is trapped, there's no square. Queen c1 by Arjun, asking Hans to take. But after bishop takes c1, white is still a pawn up, and the pawn on c3 is going nowhere. So rook c7 and e4. Very interesting move, because if fe4, you simply go with your king and take it. So he goes knight c2, but that's a big error. So after e takes f5, white is having a great position. And Arjun is completely better. He even gets up from the board. Hans Niemann goes knight d4. Well, Hans is hoping that his pawn on c3 will help him. But that pawn alone can't do much. g4, look at these 4 pawns that white has in the center. Bishop check. Just bring the king up. King e3. He brings his king up, attacks the knight. Rook comes to d7. And now Arjun can go knight c5. He goes e6, which is also strong. It's a good move. Knight check is the logical treatment. The king is bit running out of squares. I think king e2 is fine. He goes king f3. If check, king e4. He first goes rook check, rook d3 check, and king e2. No more checks. Rook h3 attacking. Somehow black has managed to get some counterplay. But Arjun Erigaisi gets the rook in, and rook to d5. He's ready to lose the h2 pawn. If rook h2, just king d3. But knight to e1 played. I don't know what is Hans thinking here. Maybe he's just taking away these 2 squares and he wants to take this pawn. And there could be some mating ideas here. Arjun blocks the bishop, threatening rook d8 mate. But rook takes h2 and now king e3. You don't go king d1. c2 is a mate. You have to go king e3 and it's winning. But he goes g5, king f8. So that if check, you can come up. But knight c5. Arjun now using 1, 2 and 3 pieces for an attack. Pawn to c2. Hans's last hope, the c pawn. Is it going to give him a win? Rook d8 check. And now king e7. Rook d7 check. King f8, king e8 played. And Arjun now sees it to the end. Knight b7 with the idea of check. King f8 and rook f7 or even rook d8 check. There are many ways to win this position. In fact, directly a check, taking on g7. Many things are falling here. And Hans is looking here and he resigns. Arjun Erigaisi scores his first win of the Quantbox Chennai Grandmasters 2026, moving to 2 points, half a point behind the leader Alireza Firuza. Hans Niemann, well, I'm pretty sure he is not so happy with the way the game panned out in the result form, but what I think was really special was the way he fought here, the game he played, every move that he played. And I want to actually draw your attention. By the way, there are fans who are here. Hans Niemann goes to the elevator back to his room, and Arjun Erigaisi will go and meet the fans. And while we see, look at Hans there being so magnanimous with the kids who have traveled all the way to meet their to meet their stars. And while Arjun comes out, I want to show you a critical moment from the game. So let's look at this position. Here is where I would say there's a very classy example of a grandmaster level puzzle. You want to play c5. Notice how Arjun's coming out. That Shrikar there, who is Arjun's manager and also one of the organizers of the event. So c5, and the point is, if the rook has to go back, then the position is fine for black, in fact better. But you don't sacrifice your rook, because then also it's better. But you have bishop d5, and this is a very important move, because now if you take the rook, I take the bishop. And so Hans in this position went knight b5, which allowed Arjun to stabilize. c5 is no longer possible. But if you played queen a6, now you are threatening c5, and it's just impossible to stop it, because if queen d2, I still go c5 here, and then if you play bishop d5, the queen is defending the bishop. So queen a6 was a very high class prophylactic move. Okay, I'll leave you with Arjun and his fan moments here. I hope you enjoyed the game. This is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye bye.
We are clicking your pictures when we are taking autographs, so please don't pose for pictures. Yeah, that's click. Yeah, please. When he was giving you autograph, please. Yeah, others waiting. Don't be so greedy, bro. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Exactly the same ending that we thought about. And believe it or not, whom Arjun Erigaisi final round take the lead and start running away from the event. Then I think you have a big finale in the final days. It should be a force to define the things of finals. You should be come up and force to do something where that is no problem.
So it's signed already.
I think this is a focus I see several also as long as the format is goes I'll happily give
So you can go as well. I'll come next. So there are others. Are you with her? Yes. If you are as a family or a group, please post well. Think about others as well. Yeah, thank you.
excuse me.
You guys mind moving there, please. Please. Sir.